Welcome to The Timeless Mind, your fast track to life-changing wisdom from the world's most powerful books.
If you crave those timeless lessons from the greatest minds, but just don't have the hours to spare, well, you're in the right place.
This is Series 2, Episode 4, The Path to Freedom and Self-Mastery.
Let's dive in.
So today we're taking a deep dive into a book that I think is really going to resonate with a lot of you out there.
Epictetus Discourses.
This is a text that you, our listeners, flagged for us, and we are so glad you did because it's packed with wisdom.
Oh, absolutely. And our goal today is to really distill those core ideas
On freedom and self-mastery.
to give you those actionable insights that Epictetus offers.
Think of this as your shortcut to understanding how to cultivate this unshakable inner peace.
And how to live a life that's truly free no matter what's happening around you.
Yeah, because that's what we're all searching for, right?
I think so, yeah.
That sense of inner peace and freedom, regardless of what life throws at you.
Absolutely. And Epictetus really gives us a framework for that.
He does. And we'll be your guides through some of his most important concepts.
Looking at what he believed we can control and what we can't.
We're going to explore how to build that inner fortress.
That inner citadel.
Of calm.
Yes.
And ultimately understand what it truly means to live with genuine freedom.
And to do that, we're going to unpack some key concepts, like the power of our own reasoning, the real nature of good and evil, and this really interesting idea of appearances, how we perceive the world around us.
And that's actually a great place to start. I mean, one of the things that jumped out at me when I was rereading the discourses in preparation for our deep dive today was this really clear distinction that Epictetus makes between what's in our control and what is absolutely not.
It's like he draws this line in the sand, right?
He does.
And on one side, he places things like our opinions, our impulses, desires, aversions, all those things that originate in our minds.
Everything that comes from within.
Exactly. And then on the other side of that line, he puts things like our physical bodies, our possessions, reputations, and any external event that happens outside of our minds.
And he's not just making some kind of abstract philosophical point here. He's really saying that our happiness and our freedom don't depend on luck or external factors. It's all about how we handle the things that are in our power.
Yeah, kind of a radical idea when you think about it. We spend so much time worrying about things we can't actually change, right? But Epictetus is saying that true freedom comes from focusing on what we can control.
Absolutely. And he uses this really interesting analogy to illustrate this. He talks about different faculties. He says, for example, grammar is equipped to judge writing, and music is equipped to judge melody. But neither of those faculties can judge itself.
Right. And he says the only faculty that can judge itself and everything else is our rational faculty, our capacity for reason, our ability to think critically.
Which is a really important point because he's saying our reasoning is the ultimate judge in our lives.
It's like the operating system that helps us determine the true value of things.
It helps us move beyond just our immediate impressions.
Right. He gives the example of gold, right? Just because something is made of gold doesn't automatically make it good or beautiful. Our rational faculty is what allows us to make that judgment.
Okay, so we've got this idea of what's in our control, what's not. How does Epictetus suggest we use that understanding to build this strong inner character that he talks about?
Well, he says that a rational person should only find what is irrational to be truly intolerable.
Okay, meaning?
Meaning things that align with reason, even if they're uncomfortable or challenging, should be something we can withstand.
He uses some pretty intense examples to illustrate this, right?
He does, like the Spartans enduring those whippings.
That's a pretty vivid image.
Right. And the point is, it wasn't pleasant, but within their framework, it was rational. It aligned with their values and training.
So even something that seems painful can be tolerable if it's aligned with our reason.
Exactly. He even goes so far as to talk about individuals who choose to end their own lives because they genuinely believe it's the most rational course of action in their particular circumstances.
Which is a really stark illustration of the power of our beliefs, right?
It is. And he's saying that our more animalistic side is naturally repulsed by what's irrational and drawn toward what makes sense.
So we're kind of hardwired for reason in a way.
In a way, yes. And this is what we need to cultivate.
But then he takes this idea a step further and says that self-improvement isn't just about understanding these philosophical ideas, it's about putting them into practice.
It's about living them out.
In our actions, our desires, our aversions, everything.
Our pursuits, the things we avoid, all of it should be in harmony with what's natural and reasonable.
So it's not enough to just agree with the principles, you have to live them.
Exactly. It's about embodying them in our choices.
And this reminds me of what Crispus, another Stoic thinker, taught. True happiness and inner peace come from understanding what is true and living in accordance with nature.
Yeah, so the pursuit of truth isn't some abstract intellectual exercise. It's fundamental to living a good life.
Speaking of living in accordance with nature, that brings us to Epictetus's perspective on providence, on this idea of a universal order and design.
Right. And he says it's easy to appreciate this providence when you see how everything fits together and approach life with gratitude.
If you don't have that perspective, you might miss the purpose in things.
Or not value them
He
properly.
uses a great analogy here about our senses and the objects they perceive.
Like our sight, he says. It's only useful because there are colors and light to interact with.
It all points to an intentional design.
And he extends that idea to how things in the world seem to be made for each other. Like a knife in its case, he says.
Perfectly fitting, suggesting a creator, an intelligence.
And a purpose behind it all.
And then he also points to our capacity for understanding, our ability to take in sensory information and actually process it,
To select, subtract, add, combine ideas.
which suggests a guiding intelligence.
Our ability to make sense of the world around us really does speak to a deeper principle at play.
So given this idea of structure and purpose in the universe, what role does critical thinking play in all of this?
Critical thinking is absolutely essential because simply learning philosophical rules isn't enough.
You have to be able to evaluate what's true, what's valuable.
It's like knowing the difference between real money and counterfeit bills.
So you need the skills to discern what's genuine.
Exactly. When we're reasoning through things, we need to understand the logical connections and avoid being misled by arguments that sound convincing but are ultimately flawed.
What he called sophistry.
Yes, exactly.
And he warns against getting so caught up in intellectual arguments that we neglect our own moral development.
Right, because that can lead to arrogance and a sense of superiority without any real inner growth.
The goal is to understand the principles that are in harmony with nature and use them as a compass for our lives.
So it's not just about winning debates, it's about living a virtuous life.
Now, this emphasis on reason and logic, it might sound very detached, very intellectual, but Epictetus also talks about affection, about our human connections. So how does he reconcile those two things?
That's a really important point because he doesn't see them as being in opposition at all.
Yeah.
In fact, he uses this really powerful example, the scenario of a parent having to leave a sick child.
Right.
And he says the natural affection that a parent feels is good, but an action that's truly consistent with reason can't be bad.
But then he goes on to say that abandoning a sick child isn't actually reasonable,
And therefore, it's not truly affectionate either.
especially when you consider the perspectives of everyone involved.
The other parent, the caregiver, anyone who loves that child.
So true affection has to be aligned with reason.
It has to prioritize the well-being of the person you care about.
And this reasoned approach isn't just for our interactions with others. It applies to our own sense of inner peace and contentment as well.
Exactly. And when it comes to our place in the universe, Epictetus talks about different beliefs about the divine. From those who deny the existence of gods to those who believe they're involved in every detail.
And where does he land?
He aligns himself with a view similar to Socrates and Odysseus, expressing a sense of, I move not without thy knowledge, suggesting a guiding intelligence.
So a belief in a higher power that's aware of our actions.
Yes. And he also emphasizes the importance of understanding nature itself, not just relying on interpretations or dogma.
He criticizes those who focus too much on specific philosophers without actually embodying the principles in their own lives.
It's like he uses this great analogy. He says, we don't value a diviner for their own sake, but because we hope they can help us understand the signs from the gods.
So we should look to thinkers like Crispus to deepen our understanding of nature, not to blindly follow them.
Exactly. And he warns against letting irrational beliefs about things outside our control, like social status or political leaders, dictate our values.
Because we should only value what's truly within our will and judgment.
Which brings us to this idea of precognitions.
What are those?
Those are the fundamental understandings that are common to all human beings.
Like basic moral intuitions.
Yes, like the idea that good is useful or justice is beautiful.
So the things we generally agree on as being inherently good.
Right. The disagreements arise when we try to apply these principles to specific situations.
So it's not about whether justice is good, but what a just action looks like in a particular case.
Exactly. Like he talks about dietary laws, or the argument between Agamemnon and Achilles in the Iliad. The disagreement isn't about the principle itself, but about its application.
So it's all about navigating the complexities of life using these universal truths.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And Epictetus wasn't afraid to critique other philosophies he felt were misguided in where they placed ultimate value.
Like Epicurus.
Yes, he acknowledged our social nature, but ultimately located the highest good in external things like pleasure. And Epictetus saw that as a contradiction.
Because he believed that true happiness comes from within.
Right. And he pointed to our natural affections as evidence, like the bond between parent and child.
Saying it's almost impossible not to love your children.
And using the example of animals instinctively caring for their young.
To emphasize that it's against our nature to abandon those we love.
Now, shifting gears a bit, Epictetus has this really interesting perspective on facing difficult circumstances. He actually sees them as opportunities for growth.
This is a really core idea in Stoicism, right? That challenges made us stronger.
Absolutely. He says that our true character is revealed when things get tough.
And that nature presents us with challenges to help us grow.
Like a wrestling trainer pairing a skilled athlete with a strong opponent.
To make them even stronger.
To become Olympic conquerors, as he puts it.
And we should meet these challenges with courage, not fear.
He uses the analogy of a scout sent on a mission. You wouldn't send someone who's easily frightened. We shouldn't crumble in the face of adversity.
Our response to difficulty reflects our inner strength.
And that ties directly into his idea of the law of life.
To act in accordance with our rational nature.
Right. He says that this principle comes before any complex philosophical arguments.
In everything we do, we should aim for consistency and avoid contradictions.
He sees philosophy as a training process.
It starts with the theory,
But then it moves into real life.
where we're constantly challenged,
He even addresses parents who might question their children studying philosophy.
saying that it's about learning what's appropriate for a good life.
And that wrongdoing often comes from a lack of understanding.
He also criticizes those who show off their knowledge without actually living by the principles.
Saying it's empty to just be expositors of others' opinions
So we need to embody what we learn.
in our actions.
Now, another really central idea in Epictetus is the concept of appearances
How things present themselves to us.
and how to deal with them effectively.
He breaks down how things can appear. Sometimes as they are, sometimes they don't exist but appear to, sometimes they exist but don't appear to.
So,
And he says that a wise person can make correct judgments in these situations.
see beyond the surface level,
And when we're troubled, we need a remedy.
whether it's misleading arguments or bad habits.
Or being deceived by appearances.
We have to counter those influences.
Replace bad habits with good ones.
Use reason against sophistry.
And arm ourselves with clear principles.
He uses death as an example,
It often appears as a great evil.
but it's a natural part of life.
And we should focus on overcoming our fear of it.
He also points out that we suffer because we want things to be different than they are.
If we can't change things, we shouldn't waste energy complaining.
Our piety and self-interest should be aligned.
Now, he also talks about the influence of appearances on our emotions and actions.
Like with Medea in Greek mythology,
Her actions stemmed from the appearance that revenge was beneficial.
even though it was a flawed perception.
And he says if we can show people where their perceptions are inaccurate, they might change.
It's often not malice, but misunderstanding.
He makes a crucial point that the way something appears to us, whether good or bad, is how we measure our actions.
Understanding this helps us avoid unnecessary anger and frustration.
Because people act based on their perceptions.
He traces conflicts like the Trojan War back to appearances.
Paris's perception of Helen's beauty, Helen's perception of following him.
But he says the real harm isn't from external events, but from damage to our character.
The loss of virtues like modesty and integrity.
So it's not what happens to us, but how we respond internally.
And he says we should live according to our own understanding, even if we can't convince others.
Like at a gathering where someone has a strong but maybe incorrect opinion.
Sometimes it's best to accept their perspective or stay silent.
And he sees difficulties as opportunities to practice our philosophy.
We should welcome challenges.
Like athletes seeking strong opponents.
Which brings us to confidence and caution.
Seemingly contradictory.
But he says we can have both if we understand true good and evil.
Which reside in how we use appearances, which is within our will.
External things aren't inherently good or evil.
So be cautious about your choices.
And confident about external events.
It's not death that's evil, but a shameful death. Be confident against death. cautious against fearing it,
He even talks about examining pain.
seeing it as a mask.
And if it becomes unbearable, he acknowledges the Stoic concept of the open door.
Though it's not advocated lightly.
And then he discusses indifferent things like health, wealth, and social status.
We should use them with care because how we use them isn't indifferent.
But we should also have firmness because they are ultimately outside our control.
Like a sea voyage. We choose the ship and sailors, but we can't control the storm.
Or playing a game with a ball. Focus on the skill, not the ball itself.
All of this leads to the idea of recognizing our divine nature.
That the essence of goodness is in the rational human being.
We're unique because of our capacity for reason,
He sees us as a fragment of the divine.
carrying a spark of divine reason,
And with that comes responsibility.
to not corrupt it with impure thoughts.
To live in a way worthy of our Creator.
Like if we were a statue by Phidias, we wouldn't want to deface it.
We should have reverence for ourselves.
And this understanding should manifest in the demeanor of a philosopher.
True strength comes from confidence in what we've learned and overcome.
The ideal is to be faithful, modest, noble,
Free from turmoil.
and to face challenges with composure.
He describes the philosopher's nerves as unwavering desire for good, aversion to what's truly bad, proper pursuit, resolute purpose, and considered judgment.
But understanding isn't enough. Epictetus emphasizes practice.
Habit is powerful. We become what we repeatedly do.
Modest actions create a modest person.
We need to practice to counter bad habits.
Reading philosophy isn't enough.
He says many can talk about good and evil, but few embody it.
Don't just be mouthpieces for others' ideas.
Live by the principles.
The philosopher's path is demanding.
We have to live up to the ideals.
And align our will with the natural order,
The true philosopher adapts to what happens.
not clinging to things going their way,
The result is a life without unease or fear.
while maintaining relationships and roles.
He says philosophy requires study and practice, like carpentry or piloting.
We need to learn about the divine to emulate it.
Being an imitator of God means acting with faithfulness, freedom, generosity.
He addresses the disconnect between theory and practice.
Sometimes we understand, but don't internalize.
We should fear our reactions, not the events themselves.
He compares our exaggerated opinions to thinking we need to drink the ocean to empty a leaky ship.
What disturbs us are our opinions.
We should be like adults guided by reason, not children seeking treats.
Focus on your will and judgments.
Use what's given, let go when it's taken.
The key to getting what we want is aligning our desires with divine will.
Give up desires for wealth and fear of poverty.
The true athlete trains against negative appearances.
Remember God and ask for strength.
Defeat comes from being overwhelmed by appearances.
Philosophers should demonstrate piety to inspire others.
He points out our inconsistency in admitting faults.
We confess some things, but not others.
It stems from confusion about good and evil and social expectations.
He says we naturally love what we dedicate ourselves to.
And since we focus on what's in our interest, love is connected to understanding what's good.
True love belongs to the wise, who can distinguish good from bad.
Self-interest is a driver, and anything hindering it can be hated.
But if we prioritize our will and virtues, then fidelity and patience become our focus.
Separating self-interest from honesty makes the idea that honesty is just an opinion stronger.
We should be grateful for our senses and the means of life.
And for our will, which judges and uses everything else.
Nothing external can hinder it.
Only a perverted will can.
So vice and virtue reside in the will.
A right will makes a person good.
Our happiness depends on it.
Every error contains a contradiction.
Because we want to be right, but do what we don't truly wish for.
We should know ourselves before seeking external adornment.
Our rational faculty is what we should adorn.
External appearance should be appropriate to our nature.
Adorn your will by removing bad opinions.
Dismiss things that don't concern you.
These exercises are for those advanced in virtue.
When the ship is sinking, don't worry about minor details.
Weeping, bad fortune, blame dings. These are all opinions about things outside our control.
Transfer these opinions to things within our control.
Like water and light, external things might seem to move us, but our core remains unchanged if it's settled.
Maintain your will in all situations.
Don't be swayed by the crowd.
Focus on your own judgment.
If you claim more than you're due, be prepared for criticism.
Practice against negative inclinations.
If inclined to pleasure, lean towards the opposite.
If averse to pain, practice against it.
Make progress in enduring abuse.
Practice proper use of things.
Adopt new, virtuous habits. like a change of environment for illness.
Focus on using appearances according to nature.
Flee old habits.
We can benefit from those who abuse us.
They test our patience.
A bad neighbor or father can be an opportunity.
The rod of Hermes can make everything profitable.
Disease can showcase firmness. Death can bring honor.
The cynic's role is to be a messenger from Zeus,
Speaking truth boldly.
guiding people away from seeking happiness in externals.
True happiness is within.
The cynic is a benefactor.
Their power comes from a clear conscience.
They are guardians, not meddlers.
They must have endurance.
Examine your progress.
Do your actions align with your principles?
Look for modesty and self-reflection.
True freedom is inner resilience.
A slave to pleasure is not free.
Diogenes wouldn't flatter pirates.
Willingness to face hardship shows freedom.
Detach from things that cause sorrow.
Be delighted with things as impermanent.
Don't rationalize past failures.
Learn from them.
Are you more cowardly than a fugitive slave?
Fear of lacking necessities leads to death.
Even in poverty, one can survive.
Choose boldness.
Slavery is doing things unwillingly.
Even Caesar's subjects can be slaves.
Love and desire can enslave us.
True slavery is interdependence.
Whoever controls what you desire is your master.
Freedom is being without restraint.
Desire nothing that belongs to others.
Attachment brings penalties.
Align your will with divine will.
Don't deliberate about what's right and wrong.
Be strong through action.
Life is a contest. Show what you've learned.
Our soul can be like a strong city.
Impregnable through our opinions.
No external possession is safe.
Secure your inner state.
No one truly hurts us, only our opinions do.
Conflict arises from opinions about externals.
If virtue is the only good, external conflicts are meaningless.
Be content with what you have.
Don't be surprised if others pity you.
True contentment is inner.
Why fear those with external power?
Participate in life's play, but maintain your inner will.
Don't force your way into things.
True fortune is inner.
Consider what you have instead of wealth. The lack of desire for it.
Those with riches often yearn for inner peace.
Desire is a feverish thirst.
Outward filth can reflect inner neglect.
Socrates was clean due to his virtue.
Cleanse your rational faculty.
Don't reveal too much.
Shared secrets don't guarantee trust.
Consider someone's character before confiding.
Focus on your actions.
Equality in sharing requires trustworthiness.
Seek those who prioritize their own will.
So true freedom and self-mastery lie within.
Focus on what you can control.
Align yourself with reason and nature.
Cultivate an inner sanctuary.
The path isn't easy,
It requires vigilance and practice.
but the reward is tranquility and resilience.
What resonated with you?
What challenges do you see?
This is just the beginning of your journey.
To a timeless mind.